for someone like, I'm not like,
you think it's already hit its limit at 13%.
yeah, like, well, I'm not struggling per se, but I see people like that are struggling to like just afford basic stuff.
Yeah. So let's go back a little bit, because it is tough to wrap your mind around this, because we're talking a little bit in hypotheticals. And maybe actually before we get really into this kind of consumer tax thing, I think we should go kind of reel it back to our initial point, which was trying to focus on income taxes, because I think that that's the starting point, right? So your income taxes at the end of the day, that is the money that you have earned from your job, right? So the ability to even go spend money in the economy, right? Like buy toilet paper,
That's where
buy
it comes
Warhammer,
from. Yeah.
buy, right?
Yeah.
You've had to earn that money somehow, some way, right?
Yeah.
And for the vast majority of people, that comes in the form of income, right? I don't want to get too much into the different variations of how people get their income sources, in the sense of like,
keep it simple. One income, one check,
right?
one job.
Yeah. So if you're a business owner, there are some differences of certain things, but nevertheless, for the vast majority of us, whether you're a CEO of a company or you're a Walmart greeter, you're getting a paycheck, right? And so that paycheck is your income, and that is what gets taxed every year, right?
Yeah.
So we already kind of started this conversation a little bit around this idea of, should we pay more in taxes? Should we pay less in taxes? Is income tax, right? Like you were talking about how income taxes started in the first place more as like a war measure, right?
Yeah.
Like as an emergency thing, rather than this staple that every single year you're filing your taxes. Because
just necessity or whatnot.
yeah, because you either owe the government money, or maybe you overpaid and they owe you a little bit of money, but nevertheless, you have to kind of square up with the government, right?
Yeah.
And like in Ontario, we obviously, from an income tax standpoint, we don't have like the worst income taxes, I would say. They're actually like relatively light. But Canada, like at our federal level, we have pretty high income taxes, right?
Yeah.
It's not very difficult to be in the 30 plus.
Yeah. In Ontario, we get away with it because we're a small country in general, but we have the majority of the people here, so we can get away with it a little bit easier.
Yeah. Not only that, but there is a lot of high earning economy things that exist in Ontario. Yeah. So there are other ways to subsidize the system rather than just from your income tax. Yeah. Thank you. So yeah, like, so kind of going off of that, right? In your opinion, would you be leaning? Well, actually, here, let's just talk about this, because you've talked to me about this before, right? You're not necessarily someone who is rolling in the dough, right? Like you make a
yeah.
like
well, before inflation, I was like almost
out
of I was almost in middle class before inflation kicked back in. I was like, I should have stayed at my last job. It would have made a difference.
Yeah, but you're not obviously poor, because that especially the more that you learn about of people's finances, you're like, oh my gosh, there are people that are really poor, right?
No,
but yeah, so you're far from that, but
no, I just had a slow start to work. That's all it really was.
Yeah, right.
I just had to catch up.
Yeah, definitely. But you're also someone who has to penny pinch, right?
Yes.
Like for a lot of things, right? You have to really be conscious about like, can I afford to buy this?
Where I'm driving to.
Yeah, right. You don't just simply wake up and just do things. You make decisions based off of the financial impact of that, right? So you've talked to me before about this idea that like you hate that you have to pay income taxes, right? Because of the fact that you're already not making that much. Even if they didn't tax you at all, it's still not like you're like, oh my goodness, I'm making so much money, right? Like, it's that idea that it kind of sucks a little bit more that you have to pay income taxes.
Yeah, and I think it
right?
comes back to, you mentioned this kind of passingly earlier, is how we see that money get used. If that makes sense. So like I'm like, again, like I obviously, like, I don't get to choose. It just is what it is, right? So like it's fine.
Yes.
Like, but at the end of the day, it's like, well, okay, if I'm paying into this, shouldn't the services, because if I'm paying this much into it, that means everybody's paying this much into it.
Yes. Yeah.
So, you know, when I hear stuff like, oh, there wasn't enough hospital beds, and I'm thinking, and how much billions of dollars are taxed from people every year to go, where did that money get spent then? Spended.
Yeah. Especially, it's like, you know how many people live here.
Exactly. You know the population, you take a census every 5 years. So
obviously something like the vid, because
now besides that, even like
that, but
there's so many examples of like
a pandemic, but
the amount of elementary schools that are using textbooks from 30 years ago, and you're like, guys, like if I'm paying this, then like make sure that the stuff's provided for people. Like, now I'm not saying that we don't have anything provided. Like we're still pretty lucky considering where we live. Like,
I think especially living in Canada, living in Ontario, we are very much so a socially responsible country where we take care of, but
extremely expensive to live here. Because of that, right? And which is fine. Like you and I said, it's like I'm penny pinching, but I'm not like, oh, I gotta, you know, have like a piece of toast and a leaf of lettuce today, or like I'm not worried about going hungry. I'm more worried about my diet, I guess. It's the quality of the stuff I'm buying.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You're not going hungry, but you're not.
Yeah, no, not going hungry. It's just, you know, you get wondering. You're like, well, I've been eating ramen noodles for like a month or two now. You don't think about it when you're 60. When you're in your 30s, you're like, I wonder if that's gonna.
Even that sounds more extreme than you actually are.
Yeah,
you don't eat ramen for like
I like
days straight.
Ramen noodles.
That's a choice.
I don't think I ever will grow out of that one.
Yeah.
Same thing with the chicken fingers.
Now,
there's just some things.
Slightly different story when we lived together in university. There were times where I definitely lived on the ramen diet.
Oh yeah, and when you're in school, yeah.
Yeah. But like, so I guess, okay, so from my standpoint of things, I'm someone who believes in this idea that we all kind of support the collective, right? We all kind of chip in. It's almost like the idea of like a potluck dinner. It's not like every single person is going to bring the same amount of food or spent the same amount, right? Like someone's going to bring buns, others are going to bring a whole casserole, right? There's going to be some differences, but I'm a firm believer that hopefully everyone is able to truly pay their own share, or like what they can reasonably afford, right? And that's where the conversation kind of comes into play. So I think both of us would be in agreement that we are not necessarily the type of people that say you should pay no income tax. Am I correct in saying that for you? You can.
Yeah, I think for most people, I feel like there is a certain.
No, I mean even just for yourself. Like,
yeah, I could pay a certain amount of income tax. I wouldn't have a problem with it.
Yeah. So again, we're not talking just yet about like the amount. We're just talking. Yeah. Because there are people that would say, I should have 100% of my money, and then I will choose how I want to spend it.
See, I'm not okay. I get that, but you know where I think the line where it should be drawn is overtime, right? Because we're all like required to work a certain amount of hours.
Yeah.